We will commence our West Bridgewater Rent Control Board meeting of today, December 1st, sorry. Call it 6:43 p.m. Tonight before the board, we have the public hearing regarding the petition for the change of rent for West Bridge Landing. Who do we have representing West Bridge Landing? Thank you. And for the Tenants Association? Ms. Lamb, how are you? Attorney Lamb, sorry. All right. So I guess to kick us off, would the petitioner like to step up and present to the board? There's a microphone here down front.
Right here.
Oh, before we do, I do need a motion to commence the public hearing, open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved? Okay.
You folks need you to move the mic a little closer, I think.
Should I take this off,
That better?
Mr. Chairman?
That better?
Counsel, how are you? Yeah, how's that? Trying to save my voice for the game if I can make it home.
Let
I
me,
think the people in the
how's that?
crowd are asking.
How are you, folks?
there you go, that's
There
perfect.
we go.
Yes. So, my name's Rick Lawton, and I'm friendly with many of you, have been clients and so forth.
Before,
And
actually, Attorney Line, I apologize for cutting you off.
surely.
Because I just didn't experience these conversations, these petitions, the discussions, they can get emotional where this is dealing with money and folks'
Yep.
livelihood, et cetera. I would ask that for the folks in the audience, please refrain from making noise, outbursts, or anything. We want to keep this organized and civilized. There will be an opportunity to add public comment at the end. We'll open it up. So if you have your piece, you have time to speak it. For everybody else, for the two parties involved, both the park owner and the Residents Association, please direct all commentary to the board. I don't want it to become a us talking to them kind of deal, and then that feeds into the emotional outburst, et cetera. So if you can, address the board, and then we'll go from there.
Should I address you?
Yes, please.
All right. Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Excellent, thank you.
So, I'm kind of a novice at rent control. Believe it or not, in my neighborhood, we didn't have rent control. And so this is an eye-opener for me. And I've exchanged some correspondence with your secretary and so forth, so it's been eye-opening. But one thing that I did learn from looking at this is one of the problems that we have facing the owner and the tenants, I think, is that there's been a 5-year hiatus between bringing a petition for a rent increase. And I think that drives home the fact that some people forget that an owner can come yearly and bring a rent increase. So back in 2018, effective January of 2019, West Bridgewater Landing entered into an agreement with the then chairman to accept and to freeze rents. The agreement wasn't a well-written agreement. It's unclear whether or not the owner can submit expenses and ask for an increase on a yearly basis. But in any event, there hasn't been any action by the owner in 5 years, since 2019. So now we're trying to unlock the mysteries of how we calculate his increase and also the capital expenditures. And we've gone back and forth on that. First, I'd like to talk about the increases, because rather than get into all the minutia, the way it's been done historically, in the way that West Bridgewater Landing submitted it to the Rent Control Board, is they took the 2017 expenses plus the 6% ROI, and then they took the 2024 expenses and the 6% ROI, and they then calculated the difference. And the difference was substantially different than the balance that the Rent Control Board arrived at. So that was one issue. And I highlight that because I don't think if we had a 5-year agreement, we'd be talking about that, because it would be 1 year after another. But it has been since 2019 that West Bridgewater Landing has been to the Rent Control Board. So that was one issue that we had. The second issue that we had is the Rent Control Board approved various capital expenditures with regards to road work, engineering, patching, and so forth. And the guidelines that West Bridgewater Landing adopted when they signed that agreement in 2018 was the 2017 guideline. And in the 2017 guideline, somehow the Rent Control Board reflected on this application in 2024 and changed the application of the guideline to a, what year was it? To 24. It changed in 2024. But for that period of time, treating the capital expenditures, it's our position that he should be treated under the guideline that the agreement that he signed with the Rent Control Board and with the HOA back in 2018. You know, that's only fair. So those are the two issues that are glaring to me. Other thing that we talked about, Mr. Medeiros and myself, is that when you look at 5 years, capital expenses and so forth, and then having the tenants pay all of those over a period of 10 years, it can impose a hardship. So he was in a position of compromising perhaps that expenses, and then maybe agreeing with the board not to come back for 2 years. Because I think that if you look at the spirit of the rent control law, the rent control law imposes on rent control boards the obligation to avoid imposing hardships on the tenants whenever possible. In this particular instance, I think it's a little different because for 5 years, Westbridge Landing hasn't come before the Rent Control Board for one increase. Now, given that, the Rent Control Board proposes an increase of $9.11 or $1.82 a year, and there hasn't been a raise in 5 years. So now, $1.82 a year. I don't know about you, but yearly, my insurance goes up, my taxes goes up, gas goes up, everything goes up. You know, to curtail or to cut off his capital expenses and give him the ability to raise it $1.82 a year since the 2019 agreement is harsh on the landlord. Now, you know, I think that we'll all agree that the relationship between Westbridge Landing and the tenants is, as I was telling Eddie, is a very close, long-term relationship. And it would be defined as a symbiotic relationship. And since we have a symbiotic relationship, there are a couple ways to treat that relationship. One is a parasitic type application where the parasite benefits from the host, and the other one is a mutualism where both parties, in this case, the landlord and the tenants both benefit. It's better together is the phrase. So, Mr. Medeiros, excuse me, I have a cold. What we're looking for is something that's fair and equitable. We're not looking to, Mr. Medeiros is not looking to impose a hardship on the park people at all. He's trying to actually improve the park. In fact, he's got plans to do things with the front of the park if he's able to do this. But we just are looking for an adjustment that would be fair and equitable. And I think if we take a look at the capital expenditures, and I think, Eddie, do you have the 2017 guide? I'll ask Mr. Medeiros to come up. Yeah, on the capital improvements.
Yeah, if you have documents that you're going to refer to, it would be helpful if you made them part of the record, just to make sure we're all working from the same thing.
So the first thing I'd like to bring the attention to the board is the 2017 guidelines. And the 2017 guidelines on capital improvements is clear that the work to the road, the pads, the installation of electrical are all infrastructure improvements.
Can I just ask for clarification? When you say the 2017 guidelines, what specifically?
The Attorney General's guidelines.
Okay.
So, do you have an extra copy of these?
Through the chair. So the Attorney General guidelines were updated in May of 2024.
That's correct. But my argument, counsel, is this, is that since Mr. Medeiros entered into an agreement in 2018, and he agreed with the Rent Control Board, and he also agreed with the HOA to freeze any increase. He should also have the benefit of the 2017 guidelines. Why should they apply the 2024 guidelines to Mr. Maderos? He just terminated the contract in December of 2024. And so that he should have the benefit of the 2017 guidelines.
Can you, just for the benefit of the board, can you specify exactly what it is that you're saying changed in this context?
Well, in the 2017 guidelines, all of these improvements, for instance, pipes and supplies that are used for sewer and water installation, screen sand for grading, concrete for pads, paving driveway, install underground work for electrical. These are all things that are capital improvements under the 2017 guidelines. And those weren't, the Rent Control Board didn't approve those. And so we have a substantial disparity between what was allowed and what he's requesting. So again, I go to the back to my argument about fairness. We're just looking for fairness. We're looking for the even-handedness be applied to he that's applied to the tenants. And again, it's an agreement that the Rent Control Board ratified in 2018. The HOA signed it and learned to live with it. And Mr. Maderos, although he could have, he hasn't been before the Rent Control Board since 2019. It's been the same rent.
So again, I would ask you to, if you can specifically highlight for us and even submit for the record, what it is in the code itself that changed.
Well, the Attorney General's guidelines
In
for...
summary, I hear you saying that the goalpost moved midway through the game.
Yeah.
And I sort of get what
Go
you're
ahead.
saying.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Yes, what happened was you applied the 2024 application that, for an example, expansion of the park is not allowed and won't be a capital improvement, in that stipulation has nothing to do with the 2017. And in fact, all the work that I did was prior to the 2024 change. But now and the thing is, there are no expenses for housing for the homes whatsoever. All they're charged for is infrastructure. As a matter of fact, what the residents don't know, and that I know, and that when going through the records you see, they weren't charged a penny labor. There was no labor charges whatsoever. All the work I've done throughout the park all these years, I've never charged labor. So they have a substantial discount already. So what happened is in the 24, and that was May of 2024, that guideline came into effect. Whereas this agreement, you've used 2017 as your goalpost and as things that you've reckoned to, and so I feel as though we should stick with that. Don't change in the middle of the game, because all that does is just hurt me, and it doesn't benefit anything, because it then prevents me from doing anything in the park. What the biggest thing about rent control is this? Does anybody here? I'm sure Attorney Gay, you do. Under what auspices was rent control initiated? Do you know?
Most times it's stabilized rent. Pure and simple.
Right, but
just,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, got to use the mic. You got to get it close.
I'm sorry.
Just through you, Chairman, I have one question. Attorney Lawton is referencing a 2017 agreement. I have a 2019 rent adjustment in April of 2019. So that's...
Yes, Attorney Gay, but what we used was the 2017 expenses in that, and 2017 was used as the
It was
guideline.
effective in 2019 through 2024.
Yes.
It was a 5-year agreement that was between, I just want to clarify a couple points for the sake of everybody's benefit, as
Right.
long as you can all hear me. The agreement that was entered into was an agreement between the park owner and the tenants. One of the things that the board had advocated for was, because historically, having been on this board now far longer than I care to have been, and Michelle has me beat by several years.
Several years, yeah.
But one of the things that was obvious was that this process was very contentious, right? And sometimes there were potentially agendas, and each side wants to get their own way with this, right? And I think, to the spirit of to use your language, Attorney Lawton, the goal of the board was to promote a model that led to the most fair and equitable solution, which would be an agreement between the owner and the tenants. That way it wasn't subject to the whims of this board. You could have you could just, hypothetically speaking, you could have a composition on this board where we love the tenants and we don't like landowners. We could be sympathetic to the owner and not like tenants because they just want less, right? So it takes it out of it removes all of that subjectivity and it allows you to negotiate together to come to an agreement. So that was what we had proposed there. And Attorney Lyon, you had said that it was poorly written. I won't comment as to whether or not it was poorly written, but we did call out at the time that there was the option to build in triggers by which you could come back before this board throughout the life cycle of that agreement and request changes. I heard it said a couple of times here about an increase. The result of the owner submitting a petition would theoretically always be for an increase. The tenants, if they were submitting the petition, it would be for a decrease. From our perspective, you're petitioning a change in rent. The outcome is simply a factor of the math, right? So we look at the prior calendar year's expenses to determine that. Now, that's the reason why I'm looking at the 2024, or at least what we're looking at today in 2025. The general code, the guidance was very specific, and that is, you're correct. That's exactly what we used to come to the decision that we did. What I would ask is that, and I've asked it a couple of times, if you don't have it, then we'll have to take it away to figure out what it was or determine if it even matters. But what was the specific change in the regs from the guidelines from 2017 that you believe is substantial enough for this board to consider the 2017 or prior to the May 2024 change, those regulations and guidelines?
Primarily was construction of the roads.
Well, it's construction of the road. What it was is that you said that 2024 says an expansion of the park is no longer considered a capital improvement. The work that I did was before 2024, so now you're retroactively putting a 2024 regulation on a prior work done basis. So
Let me just ask,
Michelle, was it this park that we went and did the visit? It was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was just before this agreement, but yeah, it was before this agreement, because we had gone in there, because with this board,
and I would have to go back and look at prior decisions if the case, but my recollection is that this board actually has always taken that stance that if it was for the expansion of the park, it's the park owner is developing those properties to sell those properties. So similar to the expenses being passed on to the tenants, it was this board's concern that none of the profits or revenues would be passed along to the tenants, right? So whatever you're using to build those homes, you would be selling or the park would be selling and therefore collecting that revenue.
Yeah. But there are roads, for instance, just to highlight, Jason, 3 Jason, that was done in January of 23. Madison was done in 21. 5 Madison was done in 23. These were properties that weren't allowed. 7 Madison was in 23. 4 Taylor was in 22 and 23. 2A Taylor was done in 23. 4A Taylor was done in February of 24. 6 Taylor was done in 23. 6A Taylor was done in 23. 8 Taylor was done in 23. 8A Taylor was done in 22 and 23. 18 Taylor was done in 24. So those are examples of properties that Mr. Medeiros undertook to do capital improvements based on what he thought and what he relied on when he signed the agreement. He agreed to freeze, and he was living under the 2017 agreement. So the 2014 agreement comes in and literally sort of cuts a lot of his capital expenses out.
Well, let me ask a question though. So in 2000, using the 2000, we'll call it 2018 because that's when the board was doing the analysis. So in 2018, was 8 Taylor existing property? Was 6 Taylor an existing property? Were those existing structures at all?
well, the thing is, and again, he gave some examples, but from the time.
Sorry.
Microphone. Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry.
Keep us honest. That's fair.
Go ahead.
That's not an outburst.
Basically, from the time I built that, I bought the community, as, again, the board members know, Michelle and Joe, I've been developing the community. Now, what we're missing in all of this is that you understand that rent control was only initiated due to a housing emergency. Do you guys know that, right? That rent control was initiated because of a housing emergency. So now I'm acting on the housing emergency. I'm building affordable housing for people to come into the town, and yet I'm punished for doing that. Now, there's nothing in your regulations, Town of West Bridgewater Rules and Regulations, Mobile Home Park, capital improvements, any substantial rehabilitation, addition, or improvement which appreciably adds to the value of the property or prolongs its life, or both, but not including ordinary repairs and maintenance. That's the rules of the West Bridgewater Rent Control Board. That's the rules that I follow. So, and I see nothing in there about, because I'm building houses that I'm going to be punished.
And the spirit here is not punishment.
And please,
So
no, please,
let's be-
please,
I get the
please,
spirit.
Yeah,
of
what are you
saying.
doing?
But no, but I guess going back to my original question, did 8 Taylor exist?
Sorry.
Going back to my original question,
Yep.
did 8 Taylor exist? Did 6 Taylor exist? Did those properties exist? All the properties that you laid out that you had built and did the work in 2023 to build those properties, did any of those exist in 2018 when we last looked at all of the records?
Yes, portions of it did, but not, I'm sure that the 500 didn't.
Yeah, you got to use the mic. So,
But here,
Sorry. I'm sorry. The portions, again, I've also gone through existing lots and renewed them. I've renewed the utility. The park is a 1960s, 1970s community. So every time that I put a home in, I've redone all the infrastructure on those particular lots, from the streets and into the homes. So, and again, there are no charges whatsoever on my submittal for any homes at all. It's only infrastructure, it's only underground, it's only the things that are gonna stay there, like I say. And even in the 24 Attorney General's guide, it's noted that a slab, that the owner is responsible for the slab, because the slab is a permanent infrastructure. It's a permanent structure that you can take your house away in a manufactured housing community. You can't take the infrastructure away. So there's a big difference between one and the other. So,
but those pads, again, going back to the properties that you cited, those pads were not there in 2008. I'm just asking a question. Those pads were not there. Yeah, they weren't there then, right? So this,
right.
yeah, and the general code today is very specific about what is considered expansion of the park.
But that's in
versus not.
24, not 23,
Understood,
Mr.
but
Chairman.
that's where we're sitting today. That's how we arrived at where we
Understood.
we need to consider
Understood.
what you're
Understood.
asking.
Understood.
But I just want to be clear.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
All right. So
in view of that, Mr. Chairman, the owner would like the committee to apply the 2017 guidelines, but in the spirit of compromise and in the spirit of watching the Patriots tonight, we're prepared to make an offer. And so when we took a look at this, because we could split hairs over if the pad was there, if it wasn't, does 24 apply to a pad in 23? So the Rent Control Board's proposal was $491.05. And West Bridgewater Landing's proposal was for $632.22, and that applied the capital expenditures that he outlaid. The difference is $141.17. And Westbridge Landing would be, they would be willing to split that. So it would be an increase of $70.58, and he wouldn't come back before the board for at least 2 years. We wouldn't have a written agreement, but he's agreed that he wouldn't come back for 2 years. So we highlighted our points and would like to come to a compromise by making that offer.
So I appreciate the spirit of the offer. It's not the board that would be
I understand.
party to this agreement. So
Right.
it would have to
So
be
that'd be
discussed.
561.63.
This way, it would have to be something that was negotiated between the tenants and the owners, because
You know what, he hasn't received any contact, nor have I, from the tenants. I'd love to sit down. I sent out a circular and suggested that we all meet and so forth and get online and share.
Reached out to their attorney?
No, I haven't. I just met her the last time we were here. But we circulated some things, and in the spirit, there's a lot of things that Mr. Medeiros would like to do to the park, but it's like politics. Half of the people don't want to talk to you, the other half love you. So we've done that much. But, to the extent that, that we've reached out, yeah, we'd be willing to talk to the tenants.
So the beauty of where we sit tonight is we all happen to be in this room. So as we get through this dialogue towards later in the night, if it's something that the two attorneys want to step outside, or the association officers and the owner and the attorneys want to step outside and have a conversation and discuss, if it's something that the board's willing to entertain, we can pursue
Sure.
that later. But
Okay.
so the number one ask, I think the bulk of the focus so far has been on the capital improvements.
Well, here's the other thing. The other part is this, is the increase in expenses. That, as you'll see, West Bridgewater had proposed a $100 increase on that, and the increase from the rent control board was $9.11. And what we're saying is that we're looking at the difference between the 2024 expenses in 6% ROI and the 2017 expenses in the ROI, because he wasn't able to treat the years in between. So we take the last maximum assessed rent in 2017, and the difference between that and 2024 we think should be used as a yardstick for the
So help
increase.
me, I'm not following the logic, because this board's bound by our rules and regs, would specifically call out, if it's a petition, we specifically look at the prior 12 months, the prior calendar year's expenses, which is what we did. We're not going to take in the 2017 or any other amalgamation of a calculation.
You wouldn't compare it with the prior year to look at the difference?
It has nothing to do. That's and secondly, as far as when you were proposing the agreement, this board, our process is to allow 12 months for you to come back to another
Right.
petition. We would never accept a proposal that you don't come back for 2 years if you give us a deal here. You have the right, as well as the tenants,
right.
for every 12 months
Could
after the
agree.
effective date, to come back for a new petition. That's the purpose of it. Every year you come back, you adjust these things. If you do an agreement, you write it a little bit better, so you have triggers to account for these kinds of changes. They can come back before the board, but the general bulk of the work has already been done. We're not going to consider 2017 expenses at all for this petition as it stands right now, because it's being submitted in 2025. We would look at 2024 expenses like we have. We might, in certain circumstances, take as proxy charges that were, or expenses that were incurred in December of 2023 as proxy for 2024, because you didn't have the December charges. They don't come till January.
I got
So that
you.
we have a full 12-month window, but that's the extent of where we'll go with that.
Okay.
So we won't do that.
All right. Okay.
Unless anybody feels differently. I mean, the rules, the regs, you tell me if I'm off. I don't want to
No,
put us in a position of being.
And just to note, so the way rent control,
Oh, sorry, guys.
and park rent works
It's on.
Sorry.
I think you got
most
to eat it.
most
They were turned down low.
is when the park owner does come back yearly, because pass-through costs, your taxes, your insurance, your water bills, your sewer, trash, all of those things change yearly, and you're
Right.
always catching up. You're always 12 months behind because you have to submit to the rent control board a full year of expenses. So what happens is when 5 years go by, it gets very challenging because both sides feel that they're either going to be paying too much on an increase or they're not getting enough because nothing's happened for 5 years. My suggestion would be if the parties agree on a rent increase or base rent, typically if it's a 5-year lease or a 2-year lease, the parties will agree on $10 a year increase on the base rent, subject to pass-through changes. Your pass-through changes, those taxes, those reoccurring
Yeah.
expense items are only
They
going to go
fluctuate.
up a
Right.
dollar, $2, $5, $10 every year as inflation or whatever the town's expenses go up. It gets very problematic when you have these huge gaps of time. So it is always more beneficial if the parties can agree on a base rent, since so much time has gone by, but then coming back every year off of your 2025 expenses for 2026 makes it a lot easier on everyone to know, okay, here was the tax bill for 25, here's the tax bill for 26, it's 50 cents a unit, so our base rent's $500, it's going to be now $500.50. The Attorney General guidelines are the rules that the board has to follow.
Yep.
Those can change yearly, laws change daily, interpretation of them changes daily. So my suggestion to the board would be even though it's been 5 years, we do have to follow the most recent AG guidelines because that's the guidance from the powers that be at the state on who controls this. And if there was any kind of appeal, those are where the courts are going to look to for the CMR, the guidelines. They're going to apply a 2024 rules and framework. So what Attorney Lawton had said, if the parties are open to discussing some type of an agreement with the amount of time that's passed, that would be something that probably would be beneficial.
That would really be the only, if I heard you correctly,
Yeah.
Attorney Gay, then that would really be the only method by which we could account for something looking back, because we are bound by what is in the 2024 book. Okay.
All right. And the regulations, the 2024 guideline wouldn't allow you to apply the 2017 regulations up to 2023? Up until the
it.
time that the regulations changed in 24, the board could apply the applicable AG guidelines is the 2017 guideline.
Once the work was started, the amortization schedule is triggered for the usefulness life of that work, whatever it is for that capital improvement. So if it was done in 2019, you're already in year 6 of that amortization schedule. So we're not going to retroactively go back and start picking up 2019, 2020, 2021 and factor that into this.
So by not coming here yearly, he's at risk, I
Or
would
not
say.
crafting the deal
Yeah,
correctly.
so
Right.
if the owner
agreement.
doesn't come every year, he's at risk of losing because of a change in the guidelines.
Well,
So-
so you'd have to, it's interesting. I don't know what was in the original agreement and what made up that base rent amount, but if there were theoretically capital improvements in place at that time that should have fallen off, they wouldn't have, right? So those would have just kept going in
Yeah.
perpetuity. So it's a little bit of it's a double-edged sword.
Okay, all right.
But that said, there's a way that you can build in these triggers for these kinds of things to be reviewed and come back before the board every year. So you're not going through a full petition. It's
Yeah.
just, adjustments around the edges, if you will.
Yeah. Does the board have example of those triggers that they could share with us?
That would be legal advice, and I would say probably not. But
Counsel?
I'd have to look at other parks decisions that we've had. There's some communities that I represent. I'd have to look at those.
I'd just like to see
But
the language of
it's-
the trigger.
In my experience, for both the towns and the parks, what makes everything a lot smoother is when they come back every year.
So
That's just from an advice
I
standpoint.
agree. Yeah, I agree.
As to old capital expenditures as they come off, as the Commission Chairman said, a 10-year schedule for useful life, the decision would have to know, or the spreadsheet would have to know, and the parties would have to know, okay, the capital line item that's $100 a unit comes off in 2026 or whatever year it would be.
Okay, that's fair.
Typically amortize over the useful life of the capital improvement.
Okay,
But with respect to the new guidelines, expansion-related items are clearly off limits from how the AG has interpreted it.
okay.
that's fair.
Yep.
Just a quick question. So, again, retroactively, then the 2024 can be applied to a 2017 agreement where those numbers and everything was used from 2017. And just.
Can you restate the question? I didn't follow. I'm sorry.
What we're doing is we're retroactively applying a rule that didn't exist when the work was done. And whether it's 23 or 18 or whatever, the rule didn't come into effect until May of 24. All the work that I did was done prior to that.
Understood. But I think what Attorney Gay was basically saying, and I'm way paraphrasing here, is that it is the rule now, and we're bound by it.
So the agreement that the parties had
Right.
is different than the board's decision. As the chairman stated, it goes every 12 months.
That's
We can't
correct.
stop you from coming back every 12 months.
So this was an agreement between the HOA and Mr. Medeiros.
Correct.
And it
We just
wasn't a board
accepted it
that
in
wasn't
lieu of a
ratified. It
petition.
wasn't ratified at all by your rent control board. It was an
It's-
agreement
We
between
just
the two
accepted
parties.
the agreement, correct,
I got
in
you.
lieu of a petition. Yes.
I understand. Okay.
The agreement is attached as an exhibit, but within the decision for rent adjustment, it clearly states that pursuant to the board's rules, this rent will remain in effect for 12 calendar months from the date of the decision, and a new base rent can be adjusted due to the upward or downward adjustment of pass-throughs pursuant to the 5-year lease, which is the Appendix A. So the decision contemplated the only way for everyone to stay on top of the numbers is to come back every year.
I understand. Yeah,
So, yeah.
I got it. Yeah.
And one more question before I go. So the thing is, if I want an increase, I come in and apply. If the residents want a decrease, they're obligated to come in and apply, not me.
If anybody at all wants the rent to change, the only way that rent can change is by coming back through this board.
And doing a
So
petition.
you can petition it. Whether it goes up or down is either a factor of the agreement between the parties or what the calculations say based on what the board is willing to accept as being as far as what it deems both necessary and reasonable to the operation of the park.
Oh,
Yes.
and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that what I'm stating is true. So if the residents wanted the rent to go down over this period of time, they should have come in and petitioned you.
So-
They could submit a petition. Good. Sorry.
Yeah, so for your example, so traditionally, the park owner comes in.
Yes.
Sees the cost of operation go up, the
Yes.
pass-through costs go up. So you would petition yearly, a few months before that 1 year comes up to get this process going. The only thing I can think of where a resident would come in to petition for lower rent would be if the park owner neglected some aspect of the park and they felt that the fair value had diminished, or there was a capital improvement that should have come off in a year, and the landlord, because they didn't petition, the rent didn't change, so they need to come in to have that capital improvement removed. But traditionally, it's going to be the park owner that's coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that it?
Yeah, I'm going to pass the baton to.
Attorney Lamb?
Yeah.
Okay. You're up.
Thank you. All right. Can everyone hear me?
No.
Oh, okay. Very soft spoken. I am more soft spoken. How about now?
That's good.
Okay, awesome. So good evening, Rent Control Board. Thank you all for your time here tonight, and I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving and great holiday weekend. Oh goodness. Okay, I'm just gonna have to
You
be
have to
right
eat the
into
mic,
it. All right. I was just saying happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and happy holidays. And I appreciate your efforts for this tedious process, and especially to Debbie for being so organized and keeping track of all this. And so obviously we're here today to dispute some of the amounts that have been approved or accepted rather by the Rent Control Board, specifically because a lot of the accepted expenses are related to development costs, which should not and cannot be passed on to the tenants. And that is specifically mentioned in Section 10F3 of the 2024 Attorney General's Guide to Manufactured Housing Community Law. It specifically states that the owner-operator may not charge tenants for the costs of expansion of the park as a capital improvement because community expansion is considered an investment by the owner-operator and not a capital improvement that benefits the tenants. Similarly, the board's own rules indicate that the expenses to be considered for rent calculation should only be those reasonable and necessary for park operation. And so with that, I guess I'll just move on to the first kind of area of contest, which would be the fuel expenses. I'm mostly going to focus on what's already been accepted by the board without going into the history of the past expenses. So for this year, it looks like the board has accepted $2,196. It is the tenant's contention that a large portion of this was used to fuel small equipment, specifically backhoes related to the expansion of the park. And this has been used in 2024 to add new houses or to remove old houses and install new homes. And so for that, they believe that expense should be a lot less if it's going to be related to the reasonable and necessary expenses for park operation. And so the board would propose, or I'm sorry, the tenants would propose that it would be reduced to the amounts that only include Becky's auto expenses, which I believe the board has totaled of $340. So we're looking for a reduction from $21.96 to $340 for fuel expenses. When the board had inquired about these fuel expenses of the park owner, the response was that the charges were incurred for office staff. But to the tenant's knowledge, Becky is the only office staff. And so our position would be that those are the only reasonable and necessary expenses.
Well, can you just restate what the amounts were?
Yeah, so the accepted amount based off of the sheet, $21.96. And the breakdown provided lists several amounts, but then it says includes 25 for Becky, includes 50 for Becky. So we totaled the Becky amounts, and that's $340. And
Thank
so,
you.
yep. And so we're looking for the 340 to be the reasonable and necessary.
Is there anything that you have that you feel that, sorry, just to make sure, and if anybody else has questions, please don't, I'm not trying to hog the show here. Is there anything that you have by way of evidence that you can share with us or direct us to that says that this was specifically used for those purposes? Because as we're going through this, no, I get the Becky thing, but that's one piece of it. That's obviously not. I think we would. Which one is that? Okay, that's maybe why I don't see it. I think we would probably being somewhat disingenuous if we said that there's no other expenses involved, no other fuel expenses involved. Thank you.
Understandable. I do not have any in hand receipts to evidence that this has been used by backhoes, but I can also say that the owner operator has not submitted receipts to say that it hasn't. I believe that what has only been submitted is just gas, $440.
Yeah, I think some of the actual. I'm not looking at them. I don't have them. Right
And
in front of me, but
and I believe
there
the
are
tenants.
receipts. Good,
Oh, sorry. Go
We're
ahead.
good.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I believe the tenants have witnessed these backhoes in operation over the past year.
Yeah, I don't debate
So I'm not
that.
saying that it can't be in there. Just that the owner operator has not proven that they are reasonably and necessary, and that to distinguish what's fuel, what's backhoes, what's not. So it could go either way.
Okay, so we have the matter of the fuel.
Yep. Okay. So on the second matter is the management costs. So management services are not great at the park. I'm sure a lot of tenants can testify to this. I'm sure other tenants may have different experiences. But from what I am aware of is that the responses for maintenance requests and management are delayed. The responses are not responsive to the actual requests. Oftentimes they are met with mean and derogatory comments. And so now a lot of tenants do not feel as if they can go to the owner operator for these maintenance requests. And so they are left to take care of things on their own. And so they do not feel that they are receiving the benefit of what they're paying for. Additionally, the management costs should include bookkeeping expenses, which would be, so management right now is $58,800 for the year. Bookkeeping is $29,642. And so in total, the tenants are paying approximately, over $88,000 a year for management of the park. I think that's a little unreasonable. I think that's excessive. I primarily work in condo law, and I have a condo in Brockton of a similar size. Right now, the park is approximately 95, right? 95 houses. There's a condo that I have as a client in Brockton that's 110 units, and they have a management company that provides similar services, bookkeeping, and that management fee is only $46,000. So when you compare the two, the tenants at Beacon Park are paying almost double what the condo in Brockton is paying for management services, including bookkeeping. So our ask would be that that gets accounted for. Additionally, the bookkeeping services, the tenants believe that Becky's time is also being used to record keep for the owner operator's separate construction development company called Site Pros. And I believe Site Pros is the actual account writing the checks for Becky. And the pay stubs that have been provided do not indicate where her time is going. And so it's unclear what exactly that $29,000 is being spent for. So the tenants now propose that that be reduced, so the total management and bookkeeping costs be reduced to $40,000, and or allow the tenants, I don't know if this is in your authority to do so, but to allow the tenants to choose their own management company. I believe that would be a better use of the resources, and a better use of their money to actually receive the benefit of those management services. And as you know, there's a lot of tension between the owner operator and the tenants, and so I think that would cut some of that tension, and allow the tenants to actually get things done maintenance-wise.
So before you move off that, thank you. I would ask Attorney Gay, what are the board's, is there any leeway provided within the law, or is there any guidance that the law provides on whether or not this board has the authority to, or would allow, or how would the question as to whether or not the tenants can select their own management company, how would that get addressed, or what?
To selecting their own management company, I don't believe they'd be able to force the operator to contract with someone else unless they did it through agreement. That would be kind of forcing him to choose a landscaper or snow plowing company. I think the board's peer view is you have to put on your reasonableness hat and make a determination based on the information that's provided to you. If the expenses and costs submitted by the park owner are reasonable, based on the size of the park, the services that they're offering, with respect to the two line items, the management cost and bookkeeping. So it seems like the dispute between those has to do with whether they're reasonable or excessive, and that would be for the board to inquire into and ask questions of both parties.
Well, to that
Which is what I
point,
suspected.
yeah,
Thank you.
and to that point, I will add that the management expenses are being paid directly to the owner operator. The checks are being written out to Edward Medeiros, and this is on top of the 6% return on investment that's already being paid to him as well. So he's making over $200,000 on this property, including the management, and the tenants are just not seeing that benefit. And so at least the tenants would ask that management and bookkeeping costs be reduced to about $40,000.
So let me just ask then, what is the rationale for the $40,000 a month, the $40,000 amount? Is there a specific rationale to that, or is it
Yeah. I think industry standard is that the management companies that's what they're charging. From what I've seen, the management company, for example, in Brockton, managing a 110 unit condominium that's providing similar services, charges $46,000 annual fee. And so where this has less units, presumably less like maintenance requests, but who knows? Maybe 46,000 is the actual figure. Maybe we need to get quotes, but that's where I'm basing the $40,000 off of.
Because I mean, just in looking at the amounts that are here, right, and not going back through and sharing all the analysis of, because we've gone through and scrutinized these, the largest expense there is tied to the salary of Mr. Medeiros. And what I would say is, as we dug into this, just full transparency, because you weren't in all those meetings.
Yeah.
As we started to look at that, we asked the same questions, and what we found was that $1,000 a week, and it's not every week throughout the year, but $1,000 a week for the owner as a management expense to draw a salary on it for his work isn't unreasonable. So we did go through this already as a board, and that's why if there's something that you can direct us to that would support the $40,000 a month, that's concrete, $40,000 amount. I don't mean to keep saying a month. Sorry. It would be helpful for us, because I'm speaking for myself now, but in going through everything that we went through here, I mean, if you could prove that Becky's time wasn't really being spent on this, that it's being spent on something else, and I don't know how you do that. That's a different that's a different scenario. Whereas here, I mean, everything that we went through seemed relatively reasonable, and it is necessary. So it just the on a notion to change this down to $40,000 in total.
I'm sure I could provide quotes from management companies that do provide these services that include the bookkeeping, and they do not amount to $88,000 a year. So I can provide that to you. I can give you a redacted version of the agreement that I currently have in my possession, or not with me right now, but that we have for that condo in Brockton, showing the $46,000 annual fee. I can absolutely submit that as evidence of what's reasonable and necessary.
Yeah, we'd probably have to talk as a board to even determine if a condo structure is the same kind of structure. Would we be comparing apples to apples? Is it a valid comparison for this?
It's not exactly the same, right? But they are both community living. They do have common area, and that common area is managed by one entity, more or less. So I can provide an opinion letter if needed, to further support that position.
I mean, if you were going to do that, it would be now. This is the public hearing. This is what we're.
Well, then
this up
you
to.
have my oral opinion that they are apples to apples, and that it is comparable, and that the $46,000 is more reasonable and necessary than the $88,000 a year.
Was it 40,000 or 46,000?
Well, the contract I have is $46,000. I'm proposing $40,000, but I'll leave the actual figure in the discretion of the board.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Next would be the office rent. Currently, well, the board has accepted $18,000 for the year for the rent of the office or the clubhouse. The clubhouse is a common area according to the park rules and regulations, and according to 940 CMR 10.032H, it is an unfair and deceptive practice for the operator to charge a fee for the non-exclusive use of common areas, unless that fee is for a recreational or storage area, and it has to reasonably relate to the cost of providing and maintaining those areas. Here, the owner operator has not provided support for that $18,000 a year. It doesn't purport to show why $18,000 is the figure necessary for the reasonable providing and maintaining of that area. From what we've seen, the only cost related to it is actually the cleaning fee, which is $700 for the year, electricity costs, telephone and internet costs. So I think it's well under the $18,000 a year. Moreover, on at least one occasion that we know of, the owner-operator has locked the clubhouse, preventing tenants from using the space. They have refused access when the tenants have requested it for fundraising efforts for the tenant association, which is expressly in violation of 940 CMR 10.049. So they're paying for a clubhouse that they don't get to use when they want to use it, at reasonable times for reasonable events. And so that $18,000 just doesn't feel reasonable. It doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel right. And so the tenants are now proposing that that be reduced to 50%, which they believe is more reasonable for providing and maintaining such a space.
Are the owners, are the tenants contesting that the work that's being done to manage the park is being performed out of that office? Or are they just contesting that the broader common area that is comprised within that building isn't available to them, it isn't made available to them?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
So you're contesting the office rent, which is a discrete and distinct section of that structure, of that building, correct?
Yes, the office clubhouse.
Yes, the office
Yep.
is a subset of the total clubhouse.
Right.
But you raise the usage of the clubhouse as part of the rationale for reducing this amount.
Well, the tenants wouldn't be paying for the office if they don't have use of the office, right? The office is being used by the owner operator and Becky. I mean, that property technically is his, so why would we pay for his use of the office? The rent would come in, and the tenants would be paying for the use of that space if they are able to use that space, which would be the clubhouse. And if the office is also adjacent to that and they get to use the office, then that can be included, right? But where they're not able to access the clubhouse, they're not getting the rights to use it when they are entitled to the right to use it. The $18,000 doesn't seem reasonable in that aspect, but also because the cost to provide and maintain that space does not amount to $18,000 just by math.
No, I guess, and apologies, this is me asking, but if Mr. Medeiros wanted to secure office space that was not on property, he would have to rent that space elsewhere. He'd have to pay to rent that space elsewhere. Are we to conduct his business, right? To manage the park. So, which would be necessary and reasonable from the perspective of operating the park. What I'm trying to understand is, this is for me, can I access and utilize the clubhouse separately and distinctly from the office? Meaning, the office is his office to manage the park. I wouldn't expect that any tenant would ever have any access to that office that's not part of the common area. The rest of the clubhouse would be.
Sure.
If the tenants are dissatisfied with the timing or the availability of the broader common space that comprises the clubhouse, that's totally separate and distinct from the office itself.
Okay. But he owns that house, right? That's common area to be used for the tenants. And so the tenants are paying him to be in his own space.
So what was the proposal? Is it cutting it to $9,000?
Yes.
What's the rationale there again?
Just the amounts to maintain and provide that area don't amount to $18,000. I mean, if you look at it, it's what do we need to maintain and provide that area, right? Cleaning, electricity, telephone, internet, maybe just regular rental space. But that $18,000 doesn't amount to that. I mean, the cleaning fee is what, $700. The electricity costs is $8,000 for the year. Telephone and internet is $4,000 for the year. If you just, divide that up, it doesn't amount to $18,000.
So what's the argument? Is the argument that he shouldn't be paying himself for space that he owns, or that you think it's excessive?
Both.
I feel like there has to be one or the other in that case. Because if you're saying that he shouldn't be paying himself to rent space from himself, then your request would be zero.
Right, but if we're gonna do an amount for a certain amount of space, right, then we're gonna I guess I'm arguing
But if
in
we're
the
charging rent-
alternative.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we're charging rent, it has to be fair and reasonable, right? So you're saying 9,000 is fair and reasonable, but at the same time, you're stating that he shouldn't be charging rent or paying himself rent at all. So it's like, it's kind of one or the other, right? So either he doesn't deserve to pay himself rent, or he does and you think 18 is excessive. So it's like one argument or the other.
Well, I guess I'll leave it up to the discretion of the board, right? That we're contesting the use of it on the one hand, but if the board does not find that that's an appropriate response, then alternatively, the 9,000 would be the more appropriate figure.
And is the $9,000 based on, because in the other example, you at least had a reference to another facility that you represent. Is that tied to any kind of per square footage going market rate or anything, or is it just half of the 18?
It's half the 18.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. The next objection would be to the telephone and internet bill. The tenants believe that the owner operator is using the services to service his own personal residence, which is adjacent to the office clubhouse building. We have requested a full invoice of those telephone internet bills to get a better sense of what spaces are actually being serviced by the telephone and internet bills. But the owner operator has refused to provide those copies and also has not provided those copies to the rent control board. It's only been the first page with the amount. So it's unclear what exactly is being serviced and what the tenants are paying for. And without more information, the tenants would propose a 50% cut on that as well.
So what is it that you believe that would be evidenced if we saw the second, third, fourth pages of these bills? Because it clearly has the bill at a glance. It lists the address for which the services are being provided. And 1 EJ Maderos Way is the park, is it not? So what is it that, so
It's unclear what the servicers are for. I mean, it says for 1 EJ Maderos, but that could also be his mailing address and not for all of the services. I know with my phone and internet bills, it'll say for, a certain address, or at least for my phone bills, right? It'll say for one certain address, but then it'll list a bunch of other lines. And so we're just looking for at least evidence of the remaining pages of the bills to show otherwise.
because you believe that I'm embarrassed to say this, but my wife pays the bill, so I have no idea what's on page 2, 3, 4, or 5. But is the suggestion then that if we saw the remaining pages, that it would indicate there was additional services being delivered for some other property or
Correct.
some other thing?
Yes.
I would ask, let me just direct a question back to Mr. Maderos or Attorney Lawton. Is there an available full one of these Xfinity bills that we could see? Okay, we could get one though if we wanted to get one to look at just to answer this question, because it seems like a relatively easy thing to answer if we wanted to go back and.
Well, we have asked for this many times before today, so it would have been nice before today.
Okay, thank you. We may take it up on that, but let us.
Okay. So moving on to the SBA loan for the construction of the berm. Our position is that those expenses should be excluded entirely from the rent consideration. The berm was initially constructed to expand and develop the park. It was constructed approximately in 2007. And I have letters indicating the same. However, despite the construction of the berm, there was a flood, and the owner-operator has has contended that the berm has been built strictly for flooding issues, and has claimed that it's therefore a capital improvement. We disagree with that, as we have a letter indicating that it was for an expansion of the park, and as we've established, expansion of the park is not a capital improvement. Moreover, related to the berm, the owner operator believes that that the flood that happened in 2010 was a result of something from the waste management treatment plant in Brockton that caused a flood into the park. There was a lawsuit that the owner operator brought, and there was a settlement of that lawsuit. And in our 2019 agreement, that settlement was supposed to be used to reimburse the tenants. That has never been done. There's no information about the settlement. There's no information about where that money went. The tenants definitely didn't see that money. And so to that extent, the SBA berm should not be included in the rent consideration. And I can provide those letters if you need it.
Which letters do you have?
It's a letter from August 27th, 2007, and it is from the prior park operator that confirms that the berm was built for the expansion of the park.
Do you mind if I come grab this?
Yeah. There's 7 copies in there.
Do you have a copy for the park owner?
Oh, there's 7 in there,
Okay.
so
Maybe you take one.
there should
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
And who is John Hebshe?
I'm not 100% sure. I believe they might have been, well, if, I don't have the letter in front of me, so I can't make it out. He was the previous owner.
When did you, Mr. Medeiros, do you mind me asking, when did you take ownership of the park? In 2000? This is when it was built back in 1969. Ms. Lynn, when did the, Attorney Lamb, sorry. When did the flood occur?
Uh,
If you could step up to the mic, sure. Please, sorry.
I'm sorry. I believe this pertains to, he wrote a letter because they were trying to say that the park was all the wetlands. And in 1969, April 28, 1969, he was permitted by the Department of Natural Resources to fill that community, to fill where they were trying to say that it was wetlands, I believe. So the permitted filling at 855 North Main Street for the construction of future expansion of the mobile home park, circa 1970. So it had nothing to do with anything.
Wait, this is, okay, thank you.
It had nothing to do with anything about the SBA, the flooding, or what have you.
So in reading this, and I'm not an attorney, but the way I'm reading this is this was the original, essentially permission to build the park. So what is the relevance of this to the berm? Like these feel like two very different things. The
do you
SBA
mind if I
loan,
take
the
a
berm
look?
was tied to the flood and remediating it so that,
Well, the berm was built before the flood.
When was the flood? You've got to come up to the mic.
yeah, you gotta use the mic. Sorry.
I believe this was a dispute that I was having because of the berm, I had to fight the EPA and the DEP for 14 years because they allowed the sewage treatment plant to flood the community. So basically, he wrote that letter to them saying he had permission to fill that already and that it wasn't a wetlands area. And again, the dates specify that it happened in 1969, 1970, where he built the park.
So the berm was built in 2007.
Yes.
And the flood happened in 2010. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I thought there was a 2010 year.
No, the thing is, the loan from the SBA is a disaster loan. I know you have the documentation on all of that. Matter of fact, Mr. Kinahan knows pretty much the whole story because she's been involved in this for a long time, along with Chairman Olivier. He's been involved in this also. So, but this was to protect. This was to save the community. I had to put that up to save the community. So, and this particular letter has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that he was writing a letter to them saying that he already had permission to fill that in and try to, help with the EPA and DEP, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Discuss the berm, we had inquiries on that, and there was information about the settlement.
Yeah,
I
we
had some questions.
Yeah, we do have questions on the berm. So before we present our questions, do you have
Yeah.
anything else you want to add to this? I know you were conferring.
Well, the tenants believe that the berm was built before the flood, and that the berm was built for the expansion and development of the community. In any event, if it was partially used for the flooding purposes, it was also used for development and expansion of the park, since there are now a number of homes that are built on that berm.
But specifically from the U.S. Small Business, this is a letter dated October 28th, 2006. It's as a result, your approved disaster loan. This isn't a loan to increase, to expand the park. This is clearly laid out as a disaster loan, unless I'm missing something.
I don't have that. I was never provided that.
So this was submitted as Exhibit 8. I don't know if we have a copy we can share, if we can make one for Attorney Lamb. It's this document. Yeah, it says in another document dated 2007 regarding the disaster loan, it cites that October 2005 was the flood. That's when it actually occurred. So, and again, that's fine. We're not working off of people's memories here. So to the extent that we can use facts, we want to use them. But this reads to me like this is a disaster loan. This isn't like a loan to just expand the park and build it willy-nilly.
Well, he has
It's in
the,
response to
sorry.
the October 2005 event.
He's also enjoyed the benefit of being able to develop and expand on that berm. And so to the extent that that might be a dual purpose, maybe the tenants were proposed to split it 50-50.
Well, so you're requesting, the tenants are requesting that the SBA loan be split fifty-fifty under the context of the owner being able to expand on the land that was added as fill. to
And
make the
has
berm or
done
whatever.
so, yes.
We have questions though on this. Do you have a specific question on this? or-
Well, so there's two components. So if the berm's used to stop the flooding of the existing park, that would be a capital improvement because it provides a benefit to the entire park under the 2017 and even the 2024 guidelines. The expansion of it, the infrastructure on top of it, the roads, the pad sites, those are the items that under the 2024 guidelines he wouldn't get the benefit of. But I think if the berm was shown to benefit the entire community from flooding, the cost of construction of the berm would be something that would be considered capital improvement under the 2024 because it is for the benefit of the entire community. The parts of it, the plumbing, the sewer, the electrical, the pads on top of the berm would be separate under the 2024. So those would be not included in capital improvements. That would be my advice in my opinion. The question I had about the SBA loan and the timing of it had more to do with information that was provided through their attorney pertaining to the SBA loan, but legal settlements with Veolia Water, who was the operator or the responsible party for the wastewater treatment plant. And there was a settlement and money paid on that. So that's where my questions and my inquiry was. The SBA loan appears to be in response to the disaster and the flooding to construct the berm, which would benefit the entire park. I understand that would be a capital improvement. If there was a resulting lawsuit and a third party paid to cover expenses incurred by the property owner for mitigation measures, whatever they might be, my question and concern would be the park owner receiving the benefit of the loan and the funds from Veolia. And that was the one thing I didn't quite grasp from Attorney Lawton's letter about the settlement with Veolia and the funds paid to the park and how that would apply or not apply to the SBA loan. So that's my question through to the property owner would be, there was a settlement with Veolia. The lawsuit pertained to the flood. If Veolia paid funds, my assumption would be it would be to mitigate what happened due to the flood, which would have been the SBA loan, which would have been for the construction of the berm. So if the property owner was paid for that expense through a settlement, that would be something that would come off of the capital expenditure because it was paid by a third party, not the residents. That's my question. So
So the thing is, I've actually provided council with all my information about how much money I received. And what happened is that to save the community, in which I literally had to do, I had to stop paying my sewer bill, my water bill, my taxes. I had to enter into agreements with the town of West Bridgewater and the city of Brockton to mitigate those costs so I could save the community at a cost of over $1 million to me. Our agreement was with the residents because, again, they're not being quite transparent here, was that I thought that I was hoping that the settlement with Veolia would be in the millions of dollars. And if that was the case, then I would certainly have helped mitigate their cost for the 5 years. What they're not telling you also is that since 2005, I've been paying that loan. The residents never paid a dime on that loan. I paid for it. And then from 2019, they paid.
It's part of the agreement.
Right, right. But all the time before that, for that loan, the owner paid, and the residents were. I didn't ask the residents to pay that. So a windfall would have been if I'd have got millions of dollars, and I would have shared it with the residents. And but what?
I want to stop you. I want to ask the question. I apologize for cutting you off,
No
but
problem.
the outstanding water bills and the outstanding sewer bills have nothing to do with this. So if there was a loan taken to build the berm for the 500,000, and that was caused by damages that were introduced by whatever Veolia did, and then Veolia settled with you for that $500,000. Board doesn't care the cup game that was played, the shell game that was played. Hey, that money was intended to reimburse you for the cost of the berm.
It was not. It was not.
What was it for then?
Confusion. So I represented Ed in some of that litigation in the Superior Court with the city of Brockton. And when Veolia was involved, Ed paid millions of dollars in 2005. He had to evacuate part of the park because it was raw sewerage. We had incredible rains. And the city of Brockton hired Veolia to run the wastewater treatment plant. What they did is they opened up the gates, and all of the sewerage ran from the wastewater treatment plant right through Westbridge Landings Park. So Ed was incurred millions of dollars of damages that he produced to the Superior Court in litigation with the city of Brockton and with Veolia. And as it turned out, he hired counsel from Plymouth to represent him in the litigation against Veolia. But at no time did Veolia earmark their settlement to reimburse him for the berm. Because he produced millions of dollars worth of receipts for monies that he incurred for moving. How many people did you move out? And then he was mandated by the town to build the berm. So he constructed the berm in 2008. So in 2008, the SBA flood disaster relief loan was for $535,400 at 4% for 30 years. And Ed never asked the occupants at that point to share that burden. He paid it for 11 years, from 2005 or 2008 to 2019. And that wasn't an agreement that involved the board. That involved the HOA and Ed. In the HOA, I forget what his name was, they agreed to incur some of that expense for the tenants because of all the money that he incurred. But when I sent this to council, the Veolia settlement didn't say this isn't settlement to reimburse Mr. Medeiros for the berm. It just wasn't.
But it's for the losses, and the settlement that he agreed to was for 500,000 as opposed to.
Yeah, there were a lot of different counts, but to take that settlement that he got for $500,000 and allocate it towards the berm would be unfair. He had millions of dollars in expenses.
So with respect to that, obviously a settlement is a compromise. So what was the exact cost of the berm construction?
I don't have that in front of me, so I don't want
But
to.
then, so the settlement, the accounts for Veolia there were other expenses you incurred from cleaning and sanitizing the park due to the flood.
Right. I had to initially put, Becky, do you have that number, $307,000 in? I had to initially put money myself into the construction or the reparation or whatever you want to call it of the community. I had to pay money out of my pocket before they would give me a loan. The SBA would give me a loan, and I believe that's in the documents there. I had to pay it up front.
In 2005, you paid $1 million.
Well, and no, the thing is, what what I paid up front was like $378,000 I had to pay before they would give me the 500,000. And then as they saw things that were more damaged, they would, they increased the loan. So that loan was never for the berm. And then the settlement that I had with Veolia was never for the berm. The town mandated to me to put the berm up to protect the residents of the community, which is what I did. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I don't have a lot of copies of this, but I can show you a copy of how much I had to put in before they would give me the loan. I think it should be in here. Hold on a minute. Yeah, it's 2006. I had to put, SBA will require a prior injection of $378,700 towards the cost of mitigation measures before any SBA mitigation funds are dispersed. It's right here in the documentation.
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Chairman, do you have this?
Right here. Yeah, we've got it.
We do?
Okay.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. So here's where, and if we need to shelve this for a different conversation, let me know. But my concern, my only question in all of this is the settlement agreement is a settlement with the party that was responsible for the damages to the park that led up to the building of the berm. The settlement was agreed to by you, not the tenants, right? So they didn't have a say in that. And how do we treat this? How do we?
Pardon me,
Well, the 2019 agreement says it should be treated to reimburse the berm payments. So, yes, it does.
In the 2019 agreement between the
It
two
says,
parties-
if Westbridge Landing, Edward Madeira's trustee, capitalizes on said lawsuit between Town of Brockton and Veolia in regards to construction of the berm, the tenants of Beacon Mobile Home Park Association will be reimbursed the monthly berm fee from the date of the contract is in effect.
But that has nothing to do with the berm. The settlement didn't have anything to do with the berm. It didn't. The settlement had nothing to do with the berm.
I think what would be helpful would be to see a complete list of expenses that the park owner incurred from the date of the flood for the construction of the berm, because that would be, I think you would need to see what he paid out of pocket, that he's saying he paid out of pocket, and then what the
settlement
the
was in
settlement
relation-
and do the math that way, because the settlement might not have made him whole.
Correct.
So he shouldn't be penalized for not being made whole. But also, if he
settlement-
was made whole, the park resident shouldn't be paying for something he had already been paid back for.
Because the building of the berm was part of the remediation of the damages caused by Veolia.
It had nothing to do with the SBA. And the thing is, it says if I got capitalized on the berm, if you look at the lawsuit, which I believe you have, there's nothing in there that has anything to say. It says that they're paying me, that they're saying what they are paying me for, tortious interference, and what have you.
Correct. But let's say, just hypothetically speaking, if you paid $5 million to remediate this whole thing out of your own pocket, and then you settled with Veolia for $500,000, you only got 10% back of your total expenses of remediating that thing, that the damages associated with the floods.
So here's what I have. On the documents, I had to put $378,000 of my own money.
Yep.
Then I had to borrow $535,000. That's 800 and whatever $1,000. That's not 500,000.
It was 500,000.
500,000.
So, but here's the, I think where the board is going with this is to say, if you spent, because you said, Attorney Lawton said you had millions of dollars, so we don't have the facts in front of us, so I'm just going to hypothetically as an example.
I'm just telling you, the facts that I have in front of you prove.
But I'm helping you here.
Yes,
I want
sir.
you to-
Yes, sir.
because
I'm
If
not-
you're just saying, if you're saying you only had $800,000 in total expenses, but you got $500,000 back, let's call that 60% of the loan value back, then, because building the berm was part of the remediation plan associated with the damages occurred from the 2005 flood, correct?
As far as the SBA went, no.
Not the SBA themselves. They're just a funding vehicle
Right,
to get you the
right.
money to do that.
The town mandated me to build the berm.
You had to build it as part of the remediation for what happened with Veolia. Correct?
The town requested me that I build that, yes.
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 So all of the expenses that you incurred
Okay.
associated with the Veolia floods, though if it was, as you said, it was wastewater or whatever, it was dumped into the property, which is awful. If
It's
you
deep.
truly spent, if you spent $5 million total, everything from beginning to end to remediate that, and then you got a settlement back for $500,000, what we would say is part of the expense is this loan to build the berm. That's part of the cost of remediating that flood. Therefore, you receive 10% back on your total $5 million corrective action, whatever. Then the board might be inclined to give the residents a 10% reduction on the SBA loan as part of the payback because you already got some of that back, is the logic there. That's why we're asking the question.
I get it. That's all, yeah.
So if it's, I mean, if you, and this is why I'm saying I'm trying to help you here because you don't have the facts. If it was $800,000, that would be 60% that you got reimbursed. Ergo, we might be inclined to reduce what you could be
Yeah.
reimbursed by 60%. That's not.
Would have to do that calculation. It was a 30-year loan with SBA, of which he paid 11, for 11 years, he paid them payments himself. So that leaves 20 years. And I believe there's another 10 years to go. So that's something that they would have to calculate, get all the receipts. Our bookkeeper, that's worth every penny. She'll dig that up for you.
Is that
Yeah.
essentially?
I think so.
I believe
I follow it.
what we would need to see is the expenses incurred by the park as a
Yep.
result of the flood. And then through the chair, what he had stated was we would take what the settlement was, which he provided a copy of the check, and the settlement agreement was $506,000 and change. And then we,
Well, part of it was legal fees, a reimbursement of legal fees.
okay.
It was a
And
reimbursement.
run the calculation off of that to make both parties whole.
And if you-
That's how I would suggest looking at it.
And
I
if you
follow
submitted
it.
those expenses as part of the lawsuit, I'm hoping, I know legally you don't have to retain them this long,
Yeah.
but I'm hoping you might still have a folder somewhere with all that in there that would make it easier, but
I bet he does.
yeah.
Well, that'd be calculated out of the 30 years. So
Well,
he'd get a credit. You paid that for
yeah,
11 years.
I don't know that he would, because again, going back to the conversation we had earlier about
Capital
um,
improvements.
the capital improvements for the last 5 years, we are
So
not
he might
going
have already
back
Got the benefit of those.
10 years ago
10
to do
years.
that. We would pick up whatever that amortization schedule is now, that would be the basis for whatever we calculate
So
to
we'd be
be
looking forward to the balance of the loan.
correct.
Okay.
And so if 15 years have gone by, there's only 15 years left.
Follow you.
So again, this is where, again, I don't know what your rationale was or your decision was to not include that in any of the rents or agreements, but this is it's another example where you've hurt yourself in this process.
Contrary to what's said all the time, I always try to protect the residents of the community. And again, I know that you say that the money that had to pay back to the.
Microphone.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the money that I had to pay back was because I couldn't I have rent control. I couldn't afford to pay attention. So the thing is, here I am, my hands are tied behind my back because I have rent control and I can't raise the rents or what have you. So it's either protect the residents, protect the community, let it thrive. I mean, none of these people would be here if reality, if it wasn't for me doing what I did. And again, once again, I look out for the residents, and I always wind up taking it. So, I can't understand why that happens.
All right, do we have other questions? So, I mean, I think at this point, before we decide on the SBA loan piece of this, I think we would want to make sure that we took into consideration what you really did spend in terms of expenses, and so we may have to continue this hearing after. But while we're going through this, Attorney Lamb, I know that we cut you off. I'm sorry. Can everybody still hear okay? We're trying our best. I apologize. I know, I'm sorry. We'll do our best. Or we don't bite, so don't be afraid. You can come down close.
Seats.
Plenty of seats. That got us number 5. And just to pick up where we left off, at least in the ask of this board, was you were asking for the loan amount to be split 50-50, or whatever the
Yes.
remaining payments to be cut in half, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I only have a couple more things, and then I think
No, floor is yours. I'm sorry.
I'll make it quick. So, speaking of capital improvements, I'm looking at this table of the approved capital improvements starting from 2019 that I believe is being amortized. And the tenants dispute pretty much a good majority of this because it's related to the construction of EJ Maderos Way, which was a development cost to add new homes, expand the park. So we're looking at reprocessed concrete for EJ Maderos, sand for gas line for EJ Maderos, installing underground electrical work for EJ Maderos, water taps for Madison Way, pressure test and flush for front lots. I mean, I can send you a list of all the things that they're specifically contesting as capital improvements if needed. But so I mean, we've kind of talked about capital improvements enough where,
No, but if there are things that you're saying the board has in its review, at least tentatively accepted, that are either listed as maintenance or other things or capital improvements that you're saying are not necessarily true capital, they're tied to the building of the other homes.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I think we'd have to get a copy of that breakdown of
Okay.
what you're contesting, because you'd want to go back through and see if we actually agree or not.
Yep. Can I email that to you or?
Yes. To Beth.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. To Deb. I did. I'm so sorry. Beth is our late secretary. Apologies. It's not a force of habit because we haven't met in a long time before this year. So.
It's 8:30. I get
apologize.
it. We've been here for a couple hours. So the last thing is on this, the last thing is the return on investment. I believe right now we've got 6%. I think that's the tenant's position is that that's relatively high and often associated with riskier investments. As we've established tonight, the park is almost 100 years old, right? It was built in the 1970s. So this is clearly steady, stable income and an investment. And so the tenants propose that 3% is a little bit more reasonable for the return on investment. And that's kind of that's the number that they think is reasonable. And the tenants have tried numerous times to reach out to the owner operator and his attorneys to come to an agreement. I think initially when I had reached out to the rent control board, that was the suggestion. And we did propose that. and I did communicate with Attorney Lawton about that. However, it was rejected, and instead was met with threats of increasing the rent anytime the tenants had tried to reach out to the owner operator on their own prior to my involvement. They were just pushed off or brushed under the rug. And so we're here not for lack of trying. And I know Attorney Lawton had mentioned trying to work out another agreement today. But I think a lot of these issues would have to be resolved in that agreement in order for us to get there. So we're not opposed to it, but it's kind of frustrating since we've proposed meeting multiple times prior to coming to this hearing, and have been just denied every time. So,
Well, what I would tell you is where this board sits right now, nothing has been accepted, nothing has been approved. We haven't moved forward with anything, so nothing is changing as a result of this, and we have some takeaways here. So we're likely going to have to continue this. So there's still time to
Sure.
come to an agreement if you want to create a new agreement
Sure.
and structure in a way with the right triggers and other things. Both parties can still do that if you decide to choose to do that. That's totally your call. But that said, obviously have to get together, and that's, up to the two parties to do that. And if they can't do that, then we've got this in front of us and we'll move forward in good faith. So let me ask you a question on the rate. So it feels like much, there's a trend here where we're just chopping stuff in half. Is the 3% rate that, or is it based on some actual market prevailing rate, or?
well, I'll say that the return on investment is typically calculated by the annual net profit divided by the total investment, or the amount of investment. So I don't have those numbers in front of me. I think if we can get those numbers, then we can probably calculate a more accurate percentage.
So the basis though is the property value, and there is a process by which, so when we look at the town, Deb, not Beth, please keep me honest with this. The town looks at assessing the property in two different parcels. There's the back lot and the front lot. Because of the unusable land in the back lot, it's valued less. So when you take the value of that, that's what the total value of the property, that's what the reasonable return of investment would be on. So the park owner is asking for a 6% rate on whatever that valuation is. I'd want to be clear, if you're disputing the baseline, so is it the property value or is it just the rate? It sounds like it's just the rate.
It's just the rate, yeah.
It's at 3%. So, we haven't closed the books because we're still talking and there's potentially more information to come. So what I would say is there's still the opportunity to come up with some kind of rationale for whatever you think the reasonable rate is if you want to contest this. It's up to the board if they'll accept it or not. But the 3% out of thin air I would say that's not being fair to the process. So it's going to be based on something.
Sure.
But
I'll calculate more accurate figures
and I would
get it over.
pass that along to the owner as well, just because fair play here. Just saying 6% because it's always been 6% probably isn't the best approach. It's based on whatever the prevailing market rates are, whatever. You can bring forward what rate you think is appropriate. Attorney Lamb can bring hers and the board can decide. But if we're going to continue this, then I would suggest that both parties do, because the 6 just because and the 3 just because probably isn't the best ground to base this on. So
Sure. I don't know how you want to proceed with the rest of the night, but I'm sure a lot of the tenants may have stuff to add to this as well.
yes. So I'm just putting this out to the board. Do we maybe need to take a 5-minute break for folks to go to the bathroom, get water or something? If not, we don't have to. But if we want to do that, maybe we can call for a motion to take a 5-minute break, and then we can come back and we'll pause the public hearing, and then when we come back in 5 or so minutes, we'll reopen it and we'll open it up to public commentary. Is that fair? Do we have a motion to break then for 5 minutes?
I'll make a motion to break for 5 minutes.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right,
Thank
we'll
you.
take 5 minutes. It is now about 27. I will call it 7:36. So we're a minute beyond what we thought. The group is a little bit louder, so I am going to ask everybody to sort of keep the talking to a minimum. What we're going to do now is we're going to open it up to public commentary. So if anybody here would like to speak their mind, get their, share their piece on the matter that's before this board, so this specific petition, the charges within, the expenses within, if there's anybody who is interested in sharing their testimony with the board, now is the time. So if you want to come up, you're more than welcome to use the microphone. If you can't, I'm happy to come down. This thing looks like a wireless mic, so I can grab that and bring it to you if we need to. When you do come down, I'm not going to swear anybody in. We're not going to do anything like that, but I do need you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Joel Kravitz, 11 E.J. Medeiros Way.
Mr. Kravitz?
Okay. I have three questions that have come up. One was on the rent of the office. Okay, one is...
You can take it out of the holder if you want. There you go.
Okay, one of the questions I have is about the rent of the office.
Direct your questions here.
Okay. The building that the office sits in is a small portion of, let's call it the clubhouse. The clubhouse is not accessible to the residents. I was there this morning to pay my rent. Tried the front door, it's locked. I was there maybe 10 days ago, tried the front door, it was locked. So the tenants, as far as I know, have no access to the clubhouse. If you are familiar with the building, the office takes up a small amount of square footage. I have no idea how much.
Use the
Maybe. Oh, excuse me. The office takes up a small portion of the building. I don't know what the square footage of the office is. I don't know what the square footage of the remainder, the clubhouse portion, but my guess is that just from looking at it, the office takes 20% of the building. So my suggestion is the costs, whatever those costs that they put out, because I don't have those numbers either, be allocated based on the square footage of the office and the clubhouse, to which, as I reiterated, the tenants have no access. Okay. The second question I have, and this is Mr. Medeiros has to answer it, is he was nowhere to be found for the balance of... He was nowhere to be found for the balance of the year. I don't know where he was. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know how he managed the community, but he was not around, as far as I know. At least I never saw him until he walked in this evening. So you can take that into consideration. You can ask him. You can ask somebody else. I don't know how he manages from wherever he is managing from. And the third question, and this has been confusing me since the time I moved in, which was a couple of years ago, the cost that was mentioned about the flood, there was a cost, whatever the cost was, and the numbers that got thrown out were 800,000, 500,000. Okay, I don't know anything about that. But it seems to me that Mr. Medeiros said he built the berm to protect the community. I think these were his words. I don't know if it's recorded anywhere.
Something to that effect, yeah.
Okay, I built the berm to protect the community. He owns the community. A number of years ago, it was put up for sale. The reason that the sale didn't go through, as far as I know, was because part of it was determined to be wetlands. That I don't know.
Okay.
That's here. Flood zone. Oh, excuse me, flood zone. Okay? So the berm wasn't, part of the mitigation. It was to, quote unquote, Mr. Medeiros' words, protect the community. He's now using that berm to put in more houses. So you can ask him. I don't have the answers to that.
I'm not sure what the question...
The question is, the burn, I'm just saying that to separate the cost of the mitigation, that 800,000 that was discussed, and the cost of building the berm is a whole separate issue. Because the berm had nothing to do with the mitigation. That was done from what he said.
But he was
That was by
mandated to
the
do that.
town.
He was mandated to do that, correct?
He was mandated by the town, not by the SBA.
The
and
SBA
not
was just
by-
a funding mechanism to actually do it.
Exactly. So my thing is, the berm, I think, should be separated from this whole discussion and considered a separate issue. I yield my microphone.
Thank you. Would anyone else? Anyone else? And if you would, sir, please just state your name and address for the record.
Wayne Townsend, 13 Christian Way.
Mr. Townsend?
He kind of got my thunder there. He didn't put up the berm to protect me. I would have never moved in the park if it wasn't safe. So I think that needs to be considered a little bit. It's like, I'm protecting a community, I'm doing this. We wouldn't have moved in if it's not safe. I've been there about 8 years. So I just wanted that to be thought about.
Fast commentary? Anybody else?
I also want to just.
State your name and address for the record,
Oh,
please.
sorry.
Thank you.
Michelle Carey, 3 Taylor Ave. I just want to state that at some point, we were paying $464 a month plus change. Again, we went from 77 houses when that was put through, when we did our agreement, and it's 95 now. During that time, that's when Mr. Mazuris decided to give himself an increase of his management fee. So he went from $1,000 to $1,200 per week. No one was asked to approve that increase. We're the ones paying, but yet he felt that got extra money coming in, I'm going to give myself an increase, okay? Now, on the berm, granted, yes, we weren't paying any money on that SBA loan. When we finally, on the 2019 agreement, said, you know what? We're going to play nice. We're going to help you out with the berm. We're going to help you out with that SBA loan. We wanted X amount of dollars going towards the principal and then an additional amount going towards interest. I don't believe the money was going towards principal. I might be wrong, but we were only looking, when we were going through yearly bills, we were only seeing payments go towards interest. Nothing went towards principal.
Name and address.
Tracy Leopold, 9 Jason Way. You know, a lot of this stuff where Mr. Madera says that he's protecting the park and that he's always taking care of the park first, but there were a lot of issues when I moved in, and the reason why our water bill was so high was because our meter was broken and he never got it fixed. We had our agreement in March of 2019, and our water bill went from $80,000 to $100,000 a year to $28,000. So at what point should he have forced the town to come in and replace that meter? So our water bill is ridiculous because of his inability to take care of the park. Our sewer bill is based off our water bill. So if our water bill is 3 times what we're using, our sewer bill is going to be 3 times what we're using. And then, not paying those bills and using money for whatever, we incurred late fees and principal and interest on those bills. So again, a lot of this issue is because of things that he didn't take care of in the beginning, and that we would not be in this situation. When I moved into this park, I think the water bill was $1 million, and I hadn't even lived there yet. So why should I be paying for water that I didn't use? So a lot of this is man-made, self-inflicted. He could have come to the board anytime before I moved in and gone for an increase. The last increase was 2009. And at that point, he didn't put the berm in. He didn't put any of that stuff in. Or if he did, it wasn't approved. And then 2018, he had a meeting, and I stood up at that meeting. I said, you know what, Ed, I'll go through the books with you. Let's look at your invoices. If you need an increase, we'll get you an increase. It's been 10 years or whatever. The reason why we used 2017 is because it took us so long to get through that information. So that's why in 2019, when we went for it, we didn't have 2018. We only had 2017's figures. So we've worked with Mr. Medeiros. I mean, the reason he got the increase 5 years ago was because we wanted to build a working relationship with him so that we could every year get together and go over the invoices. Our agreement, he'll tell you that it was supposed to be $465 for 5 years. Our agreement was that every year we would look at the invoices and the rent would go up or down based off of that, the figures. I met with him several times. He's always given me the invoices. We meet and I'm like, well, what about this? What about that? What about, oh yeah, we'll fix it. But we've never come up with a new rental agreement. And he's had plenty of time. He could have come before you guys and asked for an increase, just as we tried. We did come before you to ask for a decrease, and we were told we had an agreement with him, and we had to wait till that was over. So we have tried and tried and tried to work with him. He has not worked with us. So I just think that needs to be taken into consideration, that a lot of this stuff is all stuff that's caused by his ineffectiveness to run the park and manage it properly.
So I just have one question for you because of what you said. Is your commentary about paying for, I'm paraphrasing, but you're paying exorbitant fees for the water being what you perceive to be a self-inflicted thing caused by the park owner. Are you saying that's relative to what we're going through and assessing here? Like, are you paying too much now?
No,
Or
now.
you're talking about the 2019 agreement?
The 2019 agreement,
Yeah,
the
okay.
water was 100,000.
Okay.
And now it's 28,000. But that meter was broken for how long? So if we were paying 100,000 a year for 5 years before that, the water bill never would have been that high. And then the sewer bill never would have been that high. And then he wouldn't have fallen so far behind, and we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. But we did, that's why we did the agreement with him, was to try and get something working with them to start paying back that stuff.
I'm not being flippant, but is there any of that you're asking us to consider for this petition now?
No,
Okay.
just want to get my peace of mind out there.
Appreciate it. I opened up the door for that.
No problem. Right, open forum.
Any other questions, commentary, concerns, thoughts to share? Okay, then we will conclude at least the public commentary portion of this. What I would say is, so there's a couple of things that I think the board is looking for before we make our final determination. So there's the two primary things, and please, Deb, anybody, keep me honest. The two primary things are with respects to the interest rate, because Attorney Lamb, you brought that up as one of the concerns to contest that. The board, I think the board would be, we would like to understand what rates you want to base that on and what the rationale is behind that, or we're going to continue this hearing. I think there's opportunity to do that, and I would encourage the park owner the same thing. If, just because the 6% always has been doesn't mean it should be. So what are you basing that on? Bring something to the board. Secondarily, and the big one is around the SBA loan, was the total costs of that. And so here's one of the challenges. I recognize this isn't going to be easy to do potentially because a long time has gone by. We want to be fair to you. So normally I would suggest that we continue this to a specific date. but I don't want to put you in the position of saying, get back to us in 2 weeks, and we're setting the date for 2 weeks, and if you don't have it, then you're getting, I want to be fair to this. So what we'd like to do is maybe we'll extend it out to be determined, but set the date, set it, at least time box the request of you to bring that information back. So maybe what we do is we say 14 days is 2 weeks enough time to give you, and then you can get back to us within the 14 days and say, yay, I have it, or no, I need a couple more weeks. Because what's then going to have to happen is it's going to have to get to the board. We're going to have to meet, go through that, determine how we want to handle that, and then schedule and depending upon, we do the public hearings in bigger venues than we normally hold the meetings. So we have to check for the availability of space and everything else, so. I could say January 1st if you want. We could say January 15th. It doesn't matter. We're going into the new year at this point anyways because of the holidays, unfortunately. I mean, so, do you want January 10th? And if you find out you're struggling, you need more time, just reach out and let us know before and we'll figure it out.
A couple weeks is not a problem. I just know with the holiday, I'm gone for a couple days and, visiting family, that kind of thing.
I get it.
Don't want to hold everybody up and promise something I can't keep.
No, we'll set the 10th. If you get it earlier, over deliver, right? It's great. Okay.
So interject, just from a process standpoint, submit that information to the board to be part of the record, but that will have to be discussed at the continuation of the public hearing. So we wouldn't have.
Oh, we can't meet.
You wouldn't
on
have
it.
a working session.
Gotcha.
You'd
That's
have
fair.
a continuation of the public hearing.
Yep. Okay. Good point. Why is he here? Protect us. Documents by the 10th. Whenever we get the materials, then we can reach out and figure out what their availability, our availability is, and the availability of the venue.
And it is a continuation of this public hearing.
Correct. So what the board is looking for is the full expenses, whatever documentation, receipts, with anything that evidences what the expenses were for, that were tied to the flood in the park that led up to the building of the berm and everything else. So the total expenses that you paid out of pocket to cover that. So the comment before was that there were millions of dollars of receipt put in front of Viola, and Viola came forward with a small settlement relative to what you had paid. So it would be the full list of those expenses that were tied to the remediation, cleanup, whatever it was, associated with the flood, the damage, and all the remediation, including the building of the berm and everything else.
You
already did, go.
Are you going to accept just invoices kind of thing? Like, I don't think cancer checks are going to be able to be available, that kind of stuff. Like, what will you
We're looking for the expenses. So it would be,
if I have invoices or things he's turned into SBA or things that he's, presents to government, we don't know what we have. I just want to, before I waste your time, I want to make sure I turn in stuff you accept. Like, what do you think?
I want to say anything and everything. So if you can get the copies of the checks or the payments, great. If you can't, I would say maybe don't go. If you can't get them, you can't get them. My hope, though, based on the commentary shared today, the testimony shared today, Attorney Lawton indicated that as part of the court actions with Veolia, you may have had all of that to share. My fingers and toes crossed. Hopefully you have that, because that full package that was discussed as part of the public record, we could probably accept that and work through that and see what's there. Assuming that it covers everything, right? But yes. No, thank you, because I know it's not going to be easy to do, so. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions or thoughts or concerns?
My only. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes, that's right, the invoice.
Yeah. The Xfinity
I'll
invoice.
bring it up.
Yeah.
So there's the complete invoice for the internet at One Maderos, just to make sure that there's not other properties or services being covered there. Thank you.
My only comment was going to be that it sounds like you guys had a proposal about certain things. You may have had a proposal about certain things. So in the meantime, while we're going through this, you still have the ability to meet and maybe come to an agreement on your own terms as well. So I just want to let everybody know that that's still an option and you can still do that, because it looks like you're maybe making some concessions or willing to, and you may be as well. So I would strongly encourage some communication maybe.
And if we have to postpone this thing for 3 months, we postpone it while you talk. Whatever you want to do, we're happy to accommodate, or we close it and do another one, however we do it. So yes, the Xfinity bill was the third thing. Was there anything else that I'm missing?
I think I'm gonna get you the specific objections to the capital improvements.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, that's correct.
Through you had reference to the homeowners association, the management costs, bookkeeping costs. You mentioned you had examples.
When returning the stuff, do you just need PDF then, or do you need hard copies come in printed?
No, you can email them. If you email them, that's fine. I would just email it to Beth and then. I did it again. I am so sorry, Deb. I swear. You talked about your accountant extraordinaire. Our board secretary is amazing, and so I feel guilty. I keep.
He just can't get her name straight.
Exactly, just zap me every time.
Well, that's
My
what I was gonna
apologies.
say. Get your shot collar.
Yes. Other products. Okay. I think that's everything, yes? Do we have any other questions, concerns, thoughts before I look for a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Just that, when we do schedule the next meeting, there will be a continuation of this meeting, but it will not be a notice in the newspaper.
Correct.
It will be posted on the town website, there will be an agenda up, and I will follow over.
Yeah, we will make sure all of the relevant, so please let the association know, et cetera, residents that aren't part of the association, whatever. We appreciate the responsiveness on both sides and the feedback and input. All right. All right, we are doing business here.
Motion one, that they submit this information by the requested of January 10th, and two, that you're going to continue the public meeting to a certain date to be set after that.
So that you do a motion?
Yeah. Motion, you're asking them to provide just the date.
Okay,
And then
so
a motion
then-
to continue the public hearing to the date
To be
later
determined.
assigned.
Okay. So then, do I have a motion to set the date of January 10th for all of the outstanding asks of both parties?
So moved.
Any discussion? A second? Do I have a second? Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. So January 10th is the date for all the information. Anytime before that is fine. And then, do I have a motion to continue the public hearing, this public hearing, until a date to be assigned, dependent upon the receipt of this information?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. You throw me off when you say this so moved. I
So
know
moved.
that's it. All right. Then with that, do we have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
I make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.